Hi, and welcome to this volume, Iterators in Functional Programming with Python. My name is Sebastian Matteau, and let me start by telling you a little bit about myself. I am a cognitive psychologist, which is the kind of psychologist who is interested in how the brain works, the functional processes in the brain. So I'm not a clinical psychologist who is interested in depression, etc., but more like a neuroscientist who studies the processes that go on in the brain. I'm primarily a researcher, but I also do a bit of teaching. And I hope that my teaching skills will be apparent here in this volume. And importantly, I'm the developer of several scientific software packages. So the main software package that I develop is called Open Sesame, which is an open source integrated development environment, so an IDE, for developing psychology and neuroscience experiments. And I'm also the developer of Data Matrix, which is a Python package for numerical processing. It's essentially a Python package for data analysis, again focused on psychologists and neuroscience. And I work at the University of Groningen, which is a university in the northern parts of the Netherlands. Here you see some places where you can find me on social media. And with that, let's start with the course overview. So let's take a look at what we're going to learn in this course. Now, first of all, we're going to take a look at some of the iterators that are built into Python. So we're going to learn what an iterator is, and I can tell you right now, an iterator is an object that contains multiple other objects. So an iterator is like a container of other objects. And several of these containers you probably know, things like a list, a tuple, a set, and a dict. And we're going to start by quickly reviewing how these objects work exactly. Then we're going to take a look in more detail at how iterators work, at the iterator protocol. And the iterator protocol is the formal definition of an iterator. And we're also going to take a look at generator functions, which are a particular kind of function with a yield statement. And these functions work as iterator. That seems a little bit esoteric maybe if I describe it like this, but we will consider it in this video, and generators are really a very, very powerful Python technique. Then we're going to take a look at list and dict comprehensions and generator expressions. Now, these are essentially single expressions that allow you to implement loopy behavior to sort of emulate a for loop in a very simple, with a very simple and sweet syntax. Essentially, they are iterators, they are for loops that hide as iterators, or you could say reversely, they are iterators that hide as a for loop. Then we're going to take a look at iterator functions, so functions that you will often use when you're working with iterators. Some of these functions are built into Python, things like enumerate and zip, and some of these functions are located in the functools and itertools modules. So we're going to take a look at all of these functions. And finally, we're going to consider how you can learn all the techniques that you've learned in this volume in the real world. So how you can program using a sensible mix of different programming techniques. Some of these techniques you will have learned hopefully in this volume, and other more traditional techniques that you probably already know, and how you can combine that in order to make a sensible mix of different programming techniques. Iterators are very important in functional programming. Now, what is functional programming? Functional programming is a programming style that relies heavily on very short, simple functions. So programming style in which functions call functions, call functions, call functions, etc. Sometimes contrasted with object-oriented programming, although I would personally say that functional programming and object-oriented programming are different in style, but they can very easily be combined. And conversely, functional programming is very important when you're working with iterators. And that is why these two concepts are related, and why both iterators and functional programming are mentioned in the title of this volume. But we're going to focus on iterators here, and not so much on functional programming. So if you want to know the details of functional programming, I recommend that you follow the sister course to this volume, which is also available on Pact, in which I will tell you everything there is to know about functional programming in Python. But you don't have to. This course can also stand on its own, and it will still be perfectly understandable. So the main goal of this volume will be for you to extend your Python toolbox. So you will learn a lot of tricks, almost all having to do with iterators, that you probably didn't already know, and they are essentially new tools in your Python toolbox, to be used wisely and only when that makes sense. So what are the requirements for this course? Just a basic knowledge of Python. So I'm not going to explain the very, very basics of Python. I will start with pretty basic stuff, things like what is a list and how do you use a list, etc. But I do expect you to know what a function is, and just the very elementary basics of Python syntax. I will do all the code demonstrations during this volume using a so-called Jupyter notebook using Python 3.6. So this is a way to demonstrate code in a web browser and combine also code with comments, with text. So I think that's a very convenient way to showcase things. And you don't have to, but I would recommend that you also install the Jupyter notebook for you to work in by yourself. And the easiest way to install the Jupyter notebook is to install Anaconda, which is a free Python distribution that comes a lot of very convenient things already pre-installed. And one of these pre-installed things is a Jupyter notebook.